We got a comedy show tonight. I'm the host, Uncle Rocky. Hey, before we start, please be good to your bartenders. Trinity and the guy that came in who we don't know his name. RJ, Trinity and RJ. So let's take care of them tonight, okay? So, as you can tell with my white beard, my bald head, and my cane, I'm a product of the 70s and early 80s, right? Back then we didn't have cell phones, so there was no documentation and no indictments, right? Without documentation, there were no indictments. There were no peanut allergies. There were no gluten allergies. We just got on with our lives. Now, kids can be taken out with a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, dead. When I've been doing a lot of open mics, and I do a couple in kava bars. Do you guys know what kava bars are? Kava bars are like the beatnik joints of the 60s, but with weird little kids in it. And so now guys go to these kava bars, they sit around, they smoke blueberry vapes, they drink chai tea lattes, and they roll these little tiny joints with little filters at the end. I've never seen anything like it. Guys my age, we went to strip clubs, we drank scotch, we smoked cigars. Guys now, they sit in the kava bars and they talk about their feelings. The fuck? Who feelings? We didn't have feelings. We had cocaine, but we didn't have feelings. And what happened to pubic hair? Right, back in the 70s, it was all shag. Well, it went from shag to hardwood. Now I get the whole waxing idea. When I was a young guy, there was a very specific technique that one used to go muff diving. Let me demonstrate. You wanted to get all those loose hairs out of the way, right? You didn't want to choke. But now, post-menopause, you do the same blow, but it's really to get the cobwebs out of the way. It's like one of those 1980s Nintendo game cartridges, right? So menopause was a difficult time for my wife. I like to call it the thermostat wars. We would have our own climate crisis going on in the bedroom. I walked in there one night and there were intermittent flurries. She would set the thermostat down into the 50s. I'd raise it into the 70s. And we'd be running around doing that all day long. Come on, you could go by. We're all going to make fun of you now. No, we're not. So, I'm in bed one night and I hear, raises my curiosity, a little louder, a little faster. Now here I'm thinking Pixie's in the bullpen warming up, right? No, she's not. She was just reaching for that little fan on her nightstand just to cool herself off. I had a very, very different buzzing in mind. Menopause is also Mother Nature's way of reminding an Italian woman that she's going to be dealing with facial hair for the rest of her life. My Nona, at age 70, had such a luxurious beard, she was asked to front for a ZZ Top cover band. I've been around Italian women my whole life, 5, 6 generations of Italian women, and I could tell you they talk incessantly. That leads me to the conclusion that they can actually breathe through their ears. Leads me to a second conclusion that excuse of, I'm not sucking that because I can't breathe, goes right out the window. This whole aging thing has been sort of difficult for me. I'd much rather be dealing with acne than arthritis. I went to the doctor because my shoulders hurt, my hands hurt, my knees, my hips, everything hurt. So I go to the doctor, he takes x-rays, puts them up on the board, and he says, do you know what this is? I said, well, if I knew what it was, I wouldn't come and see you. So we're talking about it. He goes, take a guess. I says, I don't know, bone cancer? He goes, no, it's not that severe. He says, it's arthritis, and you have it from head to toe. And don't forget, arthritis makes everything stiff. Not everything. You know you're getting old, guys. All the older guys in here will relate to this. You know you're getting old when your balls are as long as a CVS receipt. I've been trying to recapture that feeling of my youth when we used to get high. We used to have the good Acapulco Gold Pot in the 70s. It was the best. So we'd smoke some joints, we'd get a six-pack, we'd listen to Led Zeppelin, and we'd just hang out. But you know, I've been trying to recapture that, and the pot that I get at the dispensary just isn't quite cutting it. Then it struck me. I don't really have to get high anymore. All I got to do is just stand up really fast, and I let my blood pressure do the work. You know, the first time I actually I sat on the toilet and I experienced splashdown, it was a very disappointing day. So I thought to myself, well, I'm going to need something that's going to prevent this from happening in the future. So I go to the workshop and I land on 2 mini bagels. Well, I put those in the toilet, my balls sat on them, but they absorbed water and they broke up. Next day, go back into the workshop, polyurethane the mini bagels, put them in the water, balls on top. They stayed nice, but they were slippery because of the polyurethane. Next morning, I solved the problem. Little smear of cream cheese, stuck them on there. They floated for the whole movement. It was great. I like to call these the testicular flotation devices. Guys, you know how you know when you're Italian? You use the rubber band from the broccoli rabe as your wallet. You know, and for Italians, food culture is very, very important. We moved to Ohio, and the neighbors came over, and they said, we'd like to take you out to eat. I said, okay, where you want to go? They saw this great new Italian restaurant opened up. I said, in Cincinnati, there's a great new Italian restaurant. I says, what's it called? They said, Olive Garden. I replied, I'm not going. That's a culinary hate crime. So my wife accuses me all the time of having early onset Alzheimer's. There's a lot of things that she tells me just are not important, so they go in one ear and out the other. But there are some things that I do remember, and I like to call it Italian Alzheimer's. That's where you forget everything but the grudges. All right, are you guys ready for your first comic? Marty. All right, this guy's a good friend of mine. We do a lot of open mics together, a lot of shows together up in Bradenton at a place called McCabe's. Please welcome my friend Marty Rinkenmeyer.